Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here, back with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion with our disturbance headed for the Caribbean for August 31st, 2024. So here's a look at the latest visible satellite imagery provided by zoomearth.com, link in the description below this video. And as we can see right now, we have a few disturbances to watch out there in the Atlantic. Well, one, of course, off the Texas coast in the Gulf of Mexico, but we have two out here in the Atlantic that we're monitoring really closely. One is probably going to not be a big issue since there's some drier air out here, but it's this disturbance that I circle here in yellow that is going to be the big one to really watch still, according to our latest model. Here's a very close and zoomed in view on that tropical disturbance headed for the Windward Islands still, and as we can see, that there is still some sort of spin in the atmosphere with this. We can definitely get an idea what our winds are doing. We have fairly strong, robust trade winds to the north of this system. We have southwesterly flow down here, so that's what we could definitely see. And then there is even some semblance here. We do have northerly flow, so this could be beginning to close off a little bit more. And we can see in recent frames we have increasing deep convection a little closer to the center of circulation. So we'll see what happens today with our model runs to see if they capture this more carefully, because if they do, this could end up being a little bit of a different story. We might see a few uptrends or downtrends within the model guidance, but as it stands right now, this is definitely looking a little bit more healthier than it did yesterday as far as the low-level cloud motions I can see. But when just looking at the deep convection, this looks to remain fairly disorganized with percolating convection here to the south, also to the east, and a little bit to the west. Therefore, if you are living on the Windward Islands, such as St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Barbados, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, Antigua, and Barbuda, as well as St. Kitts and Nevis down here, and even some of these other islands like Grenada, as well as, again, Barbados, definitely need to be watching this because this could still develop more than what models indicate. And again, models are just based on the initial conditions out here, so maybe this is a little stronger than what models indicate, and that could really make a huge difference as this area of disturbed weather heads towards these islands in the next 2 or 3 days. So now, when taking a look at our latest 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida, there are still 3 areas to really watch this morning and this early afternoon. We have one area over here coming off of Africa not too long ago, just to the southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, but it's this area that I've circled in black that really needs to be watched really closely. Now it looks like the area that has the potential for tropical development will be over these islands and just to the west, where there is a 50% chance of tropical development over Jamaica and over perhaps even, say, the Dominican Republic and even into the northwestern Caribbean. And then last but not least, we have our other disturbance over here off the Texas coast that will continue to bring some flood concerns, heavy rainfall, and gusty wind. Now the question really remains if this system in the Caribbean is going to be able to develop at all. We're going to be looking at your 4 global computer models, including the ensembles. So some good, nice detail coming your way here. And as we go forward in time on the Weather Bell website, looking at the European model, we discussed this last night. This is last night's model run. And we can see that the system here is less organized to begin with on approach to these islands of the windwards versus yesterday morning's run looked a little bit more healthier. So a less healthy system to begin with over these islands means it might struggle a little bit more to get its act together once it moves into the Central Caribbean and even into the Gulf of Mexico. So this is day 3. Right here over these islands. So this would be Monday, late morning, early afternoon of September the 2nd. And again, there's not a closed circulation. This is still an open wave trough axis with southerly winds here, northeasterly winds here. And so this is not a tropical depression or tropical storm, even so it may have some gusty winds to the north of that system. Now going forward into basically, let's go all the way out to day 4. That's going to be for Tuesday afternoon, September the 3rd. And you can see just really not healthy at all on the European model. And then going forward, this passes over Jamaica as, again, a tropical wave, no tropical depression or storm. And that's day 5. And then once this gets into the northwestern Caribbean, this could develop a little bit more. There is still some signals from the global models that I'm about to show you that still indicate now seems to be that the northwestern Caribbean right in here seems to be the area to really watch for rapid tropical development. And then once this gets into the Gulf of Mexico, this could take off pretty quickly. But again, until we get a coherent circulation, this is probably one of those ungenerous forecasts. And right now, I'm still predicting this to be coming at least a tropical storm down the road within the next 7 days. So a tropical storm may be here, or maybe a tropical storm here in the Gulf of Mexico, and potentially a hurricane. Still not out of the question. It's still on the table, unfortunately, for those people that live along the Gulf Coast or along, say, Western Cuba or the Yucatan Peninsula. The reason why I still say this could become a tropical storm or hurricane is looking at the latest GFS model. Again, this is the 060 run. So we got a new model in from last night, between last night's stream and this morning's video. And so when we go forward, now there could still be some downtrends. So when this video comes out at 9 o'clock this morning, this might have changed a little bit. This might not be as aggressive, or it might be more aggressive. Either way, there is a little bit of a knot in the flow here over the Windward Islands. And this would be for Monday afternoon over the Windward Islands, and then it gets into the Caribbean as a very weak tropical wave here. In fact, there's barely a signal. You could almost say these are enhanced trade winds through here. Not much of a semblance of any spin in the atmosphere, but it's there because as we go forward in time, we can still see that this might attempt later on in the period to spin up, but one could even argue that there's even a disturbance even here at all. I mean, it's very, very weak, very anemic looking. And then by the end of the forecast period, towards almost day 10, this gets into the Caribbean as a possibly a tropical depression or a storm. We'll see if that actually still seems to stick on the models, but much weaker on the last couple of runs from the GFS, as this becomes a huge uncertainty. And then this gets into the Gulf of Mexico and potentially strengthens. But again, we're only going to go out to day 10 here because there's a lot of uncertainty, but some of the models do indicate that this could still hit Texas. Actually, we'll briefly look at that. But again, please take this with a grain of salt. As we talked about in last night's live stream, I liked a lot of the replies, a lot of the good compliments about that. Okay, and right here, you can see 300 hours out. So this would be September the 12th, possibly a tropical storm on approach to, say, Louisiana or Texas. But you can see each model run here is very different. We're still seeing a lot of uncertainty in the modeling. And until we get a more consistent amount of data, it's going to be very much back and forth. It's weaker on some runs. It's stronger on some other runs. Looking at the Canadian model, and we can see there is still some solutions here. Now, the Canadian is still a bit on the aggressive side on this developing, but not out of the realm of possibility. We will have to wait and see what our 12Z model run does when it gets released later on this morning. If we go forward, again, over the islands here by Monday night, so a slower run on the Canadian versus a faster run on the Euro, indicating Monday morning, Canadian, Monday night or Monday evening. And this continues to move over the Caribbean, and this is a bit on the aggressive side, showing a tropical storm south of Jamaica. We will see. We are going to really have to wait and see with what this next run shows. If it's weaker, if it's stronger, if it's further south, if it's further north. And then it continues to get better organized once it gets into the northwestern Caribbean, and then emerges. So it's going to hit the Yucatan here perhaps between Friday night into Sunday morning is what our time frame actually is for those that are watching. Again, if we back it out, there is Saturday morning, Saturday late morning, early afternoon. Here is Monday or Sunday afternoon on the GFS, and the Canadian is a lot faster, or a lot actually, yeah, not as fast as the GFS. Actually, the GFS pretty fast if you think about it. And then this emerges out into the Gulf of Mexico as a possibly a strengthening system. Last but not least, here on our deterministic model field, we can see the icon model. This is the 0Z output. We can see that the system also not very coherent versus our Canadian model. So probably more fitting with the Euro and GFS on this model cycle. And then as this gets into the Caribbean, it does try to develop still, but guess what? That's where all of the consistency ends there on that model. If we look at our 060 run, it is not there. In fact, it is over here instead of over here. So there you have it. I mean, there's a lot of inconsistencies amongst the model versus this run and yesterday's run showing a whole different ballgame. In fact, this has really sped up on this model over the last several runs, and now it's way over here, perhaps versus way over here like it was just 4 model runs ago. Rainfall totals still look to be fairly impressive with this tropical wave. Regardless of development, there will be some enhanced rainfall and gusty winds for these windward islands. So St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, if you're on the Dominica Island, if you're on Guadeloupe, if you're on, say, Grenada down here, if you're on Barbados or Grenada, one of the, however you say it, you could still see about 1 to 2 inches of rainfall. If you are in Puerto Rico, you could still see anywhere between about 3/4 of an inch all the way up to 2 inches due to some orographic effects and some orographic effects on the Dominican Republic, Haitian Peninsula, where you might see anywhere between about a 1/2 inch all the way up to perhaps maybe 1.5 inches. And then Jamaica over here, you could see about 1 inch of rain. And then Grand Cayman and some of these other islands, you might see up to about 1 inch, with Western Cuba expecting to see a little bit more perhaps. Actually, this has not rendered all the way through. No, this is the 060 run. So you can see actually there will be more rainfall. I did not render it all the way through. So actually the Dominican Republic as well as Jamaica could get at least 2 to 3 inches of rain out of this. And then of course, if you are in portions of the Yucatan and the western Cuba area, you might get a couple of inches. So that's a look at your rainfall forecast. So now the question really remains, how organized and how strong will this get? This tropical wave headed towards the Windward Islands. There's a lot of questions. Everyone asking me, even from Florida, even from the Carolinas, even from the Gulf Coast of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and even Florida, saying that, will this hit my area? It's very hard to say right now. Looking at the latest European model deep layer moisture plot, these teal colors indicate more moisture in the deep layers of the atmosphere. These browner colors indicate more drier air in the atmosphere. So simply way to put it. And as we go forward in time, we can see there is our innocuous tropical wave as it moves over the Windward Islands. Some fairly robust moisture with this. You can see deep green colors indicating that relative humidities here are above 80%. As we go forward in time here over the next 5 days on the European model, we can see still what appears to be a fairly healthy tropical wave that is developing. All right, and again, some of you are asking, why is this not going to develop in a hurry? That's probably due to some stability issues or instability issues in the atmosphere above this tropical wave that might be preventing some development with this. But regardless of development, this is going to bring in some impact. So Jamaica likely to get some heavy rainfall and gusty winds, and then eventually these Cayman Islands by the time we go into Friday. And then, of course, you can see there lots of green indicating a lot of moisture. And then once this gets into the Gulf, there's a lot of uncertainty on how this is all going to evolve. As you know, there is this pocket of drier air to the west of the system that could get sheared in and actually prevent significant strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico, whereas we have different solutions from our different models. So now looking at the wind shear forecast, we can see that the wind shear is not going to be a big problem with this, quite surprisingly. Wind shear anywhere between 5 to 15 knots overall. And as we go forward in time over the next 5 days, as this makes its journey across the Caribbean, the wind shear will be dying off a little bit more. And so we instead have outflow shear vectors. These are shear vectors, not wind vectors. Well, shear is a form of wind, but you can see that the shear is not doing this. It's not cutting across the system like this. And so this is a very light sheared environment over the cyclone at this point. So this does have potential, and we're still not going to let our guard down. Even so, we have seen some downtrends in the 0Z model field. Actually, we only have one 0Z model in, and that's the GFS. And so this is not a done deal yet. This could still theoretically surprise us with huge surprises, in fact, because of the environment that after all this is headed into. So now what about the steering flow with this disturbance? Well, if we look at the 500 millibar steering chart here, we can see that the ISO lines here are thicknesses in the atmosphere. So this is a topographical map. Higher heights to the north mean there's a ridge of high pressure outlined right here. So this is where we have our ridge. This is our disturbance down here. And what's going to end up happening is the system is going to continue to be steered generally westward because this ridge right here is not going to go anywhere. It's going to actually retrograde as our disturbance is actually moving towards a generally west direction. So that's why the system is not going to be allowed to turn north at all, and it's going to continue off towards the west. That's been fairly well modeled right now. There's a pretty good decent signal that this scenario actually ends up happening in the next 5 days. Now, after the 5-day time frame, there's a lot of uncertainty where the launching point of this is going to be. If this is going to hit the Yucatan, if this is going to hit Western Cuba, really will depend on a number of things. One, how strong the system is. Two, how fast it moves and outpaces this ridge over Florida. And thirdly, just overall, what other factors are coming into play with another trough here approaching from left center. Then as we go, and that's day 7 and day 8, you can see that the system then, this trough over the Midwest, you can see it here dipping even into the deep south, will encroach onto the system and weaken the ridge. So the western flank of this ridge is not able to nose eastward or nose westward and sets the edge to this. So the system is likely then to turn northward at some point here. When that turn actually happens remains uncertain, but you can see here, at least in the next 10 days, there's our ridge, and here is a weakness, a break in that ridge. So the system is able to turn north, unfortunately, here and strengthen on approach to perhaps the Gulf Coast. But again, the Gulf Coast remains at a 1% chance of seeing this impacting you until we get more better model data. The GFS has a very different scenario. If we go forward here, you can see that the system is a little further to the south. The ridge is not as well established here on the GFS model run over Florida. And then as we go forward, what ends up happening is this ridge balloons out a little bit. So it ends up building a little bit further westward. And what ends up happening is this actually gets pushed into the Bay of Campeche or Campeche. You can see it right there moving off the Yucatan, and then it kind of stalls as it finds its weakness here in the ridge or in the subtropical ridge, and then perhaps will get ushered northeastward into Louisiana. But I just wanted to show you all at the 300-hour mark how uncertain this forecast is. This is one great example. This is the 06Z GFS model run, and you can see that if I plot down each dot here, which indicates its center, this is the 06Z run. This is the that's the 06Z run. Oops, where did my pin go? All right, hold on a second. So you can see this is where the center is. And if we actually back it out one more frame, it's way over here. And if we go back it out another frame on the 18Z run from yesterday, it's over Florida. And then back it out again. So there's a lot of uncertainties in the models at indicating some are slower, some are faster, some are way off, way to the west, some are way to the east. So there's no coherent signal, unfortunately, and I wish I can say we have some news to share with you. This system is going to, in fact, move into the Gulf, but right now it remains highly uncertain. So looking at our 12Z European, actually this is the latest. This is from yesterday's morning's run. Yeah, this is yesterday morning's run, and you can see that, remember when we looked at this, a lot of intense hurricane tracks on this. Could have been a very big deal, but as we look at our 0Z European ensemble forecast, models have downtrended notably on this a little bit, at least early on in this forecast, not as much indicating a tropical storm or a tropical depression, but in fact some down the road still indicate that there could still be some strengthening here. And given that fact, that's why I do forecast this to become a tropical storm or even perhaps a low-grade hurricane with winds maybe of at least 75 miles an hour at the very high-end forecast once this enters the Gulf. Because there is still some signal here from the Euro right now that there still is potential for this to really intensify once it approaches the northwestern Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico in the next 7 to 10 days. One other model that I wanted to show you all is this is a look at the GFS or GEFS ensemble. And we can see here, very messy look here, not very consistent at all. Some models go this way, some models actually turn this still this way. So again, until we get a coherent circulation, a closed one, and a more organized, robust one, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty here until this thing develops. And it could be until it gets to Jamaica or the northwestern Caribbean until we get a better forecast. But anyways, if you found this video very helpful and informative, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon if you do end up subscribing, where it has all notifications. Make sure you all do that. Don't put it for personalized notifications, all notifications, so you get notified when I have a live stream, when I upload another video, make some shorts videos and blog posts on my channel, because I'm very active, as you know. So make sure you do subscribe and enable all notifications. Also, leave a comment in the section below and hit the like button if you did enjoy today's video. And of course, share this with your family and friends on social media. The more people share this, the larger the audience gets, and YouTube likes that very much. So anyways, thank you all for watching this morning's update on our tropical disturbance here, headed for the Windward Islands. As always, we're going to keep an eye on what this does. Does it bring a lot more impacts? We will be letting you know, and maybe I go live this evening on this disturbance. It really just depends on latest models, data, and other factors. All right, but until next time, I'll be back with you more very soon with more weather content and updates on this disturbance.